Dana, thank you very much for, again, doing a great job organizing tonight's talk. I'm really looking forward to hearing Jessica's presentation and somewhat of an alternative photographic process. Um, I want to let you know we did have our board meeting this morning. It went very well. This is always a busy time for us. We're finishing up end of the year duties that we have, including making filings at the Attorney General's office. As you know, we are registered as a nonprofit, and they require us to supply them with certain information, financial information and such. A couple of things came up, Holly, outreach director for schools, had to leave us a few months back. She's the outreach director for high schools and colleges. We make a lot of donations to those schools of equipment that we get. They are very, very grateful. But since she's left, we have not been able to replace her. So if you or if you know someone who'd like to come in and do some outreach for us to the high schools and let them know that we are available to supply darkroom equipment, I would really appreciate that. The other thing I want to say too is, like I said, we're getting together our financial information. We give that to a CPA, and I have seen a draft of that, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape. And looking at some of the details, though, our dues don't come close to covering all the costs that we have. We have a warehouse, we have to rent, we have patient snapshots and and we have other expenses too. We really are reluctant to increase dues. It looks like we're going to be able to keep that going for a while. But in looking at some of the funds that had come in the last year or two, we've gotten donations, and that has really helped, mostly from people who have passed away, and in their spouses or in their will, they have instructed that the camera collections or whatever be donated to PHSNE. And that has really helped us keep our costs down and has allowed us to keep on going without raising dues now for a couple of years. So I would ask everyone to maybe keep that in mind as you do your estate planning, because we'll take good care of it, make sure everything you have finds good homes. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Dana, and we can get started on tonight's presentation. Dana?
Thanks, John. I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. Before I introduce our speaker, Jesseca Ferguson, just a few announcements. The active screen is being recorded for YouTube. Gallery view, which you may be in right now, if you go up to the top right of your screen to the view icon, speaker view will be best for this presentation. Your audio and video are at the bottom left of your screen. Please stay on mute during the presentation. If you have questions, you can type them into chat, which is also at the bottom of your screen, and I will relay them to Jesseca at the end. And if you have technical questions, you can, or problems, please type them into chat also. All right, Jesseca Ferguson is a Boston-based artist who has experimented with pinhole cameras and various antiquarian photo processes since 1990. Her recent focus on plant-based photographic methods include chlorophyll prints as well as anthotypes. Her work is in the permanent collection of more than 20 museums and libraries, including the MFA Boston, Harvard Art Museums, the Museum of the History of Photography in Krakow, Poland, and the Fox Talbot Museum in Laycock Abbey, England. Her artistic and curatorial projects have been supported by Art Matters, Inc., Trust for Mutual Understanding, McDowell LEF Foundation, and Engelhardt Foundation. Her images and photo objects have been published in numerous books, catalogs, and articles on handmade photography in the US and abroad. She received her undergraduate degrees from Harvard University, AB, magna cum laude, and Massachusetts College of Art and Design, BFA, and her MFA from Tufts University in conjunction with the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. An artist educator, Ferguson has taught in Boston area art schools, including Mass College of Art and Design and School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts. For further information, you can visit her website at www.museumofmemory.com. And Jesseca, I'll ask you to unmute and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Dana, for all your help. And I hope I can do this. Okay. Everything I do is really simple. This seems so complicated. Okay, so I hit share. Okay, and then I want share sound. And I'm going to my desktop. Oh dear, and I'm just seeing all of you. And I'm not seeing my, oh, maybe if I do this, here we go. Okay, my presentation is not opening. Let me try this. Oh, thank God. Okay, here it is. All right, so I'm going to go to slideshow and play from start. Hang on. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm excited to share with you about Anthotypes, plant-based photography. And I wanted to say thank you because I came once in person in 2011. I'm not sure where it was, but Lou Regelman met me at the subway and we went out there. Maybe it was Newton or Waltham. And I was actually showing slides and bringing actual cameras. And I want to say thank you to John Vojtovich, who somehow we met at a talk and he invited me to come and meet with all of you then. And these are some of my earlier pinhole photos, just so you have, if you haven't seen them before, there's some on my website. And I also, when I showed those slides in 2011, I brought some of my cameras, and I know a lot of you collect cameras. I thought you might be interested. I don't remember who made this camera. I made a lot of my own cameras, but this one had a Polaroid back. So for me, that was pretty high tech. And type 55 film, which if any of you use that, it was a fabulous film, instant positive, instant negative. And I think this was a picture of me that was on the Polaroid website. A neighbor took it of me. And then in 2010, this is another shot of me in my studio. And this camera right here, it's a pinhole camera, no lens. I bought this gadget. I don't even know what it was. Probably you all would know. I bought it at Photographica sometime in the 90s. A friend took me there. And it had this fabulous thing for holding an 8x10 film holder. So this was my high-tech camera. That's in quotes, high-tech pinhole camera. And it was a great friend, and I took it with me to the West Indies in 1995. And this is the kind of negative that I made with that camera, an 8x10. This was in the BU biology lab. That's some of you might know, it's a pigeon skeleton. And this is probably familiar to all of you, which is now antiquarian. Most people just take pictures on their phone, but I remember the day when we used this. So in case you're not sure what an anthotype is, it's an ephemeral, impermanent image made using flower or plant parts. And anthos is ancient Greek for flower. And it could also be called a phytotype, but anthotype seems to be the name that's sticking and is used the most. And it's very simple. You just use paper or some other substrate, something to block light and the sun and the plant materials. And then you have to be very patient because your exposures can take hours to days or weeks. And you probably know Sir John Herschel, who was, excuse me, I seem to be losing my voice here, wonderful, marvelous person at the start of photography, invented many things. He came up with the word snapshot, positive and negative, fixer. He really was very much part of the beginning of photography. If you do some reading around Anthotype, you're going to also come upon the name of Mary Somerville, who was a 19th century scientist. And that word was invented to describe her because it was always men of science. And here she was a woman, so they came up with this title. Some people insist that she invented the anthotype, but Malin Fabry, who's a Swedish photographer and educator, organizer of alternativephotography.com, has done extensive research. She did not invent it, but she certainly did other research that benefited the notion by studying plant materials. Now, Anna Atkins did not use the anthotype herself, but I don't think you can mention early photographic processes without talking about her, because she worked, as you know, with British algae and created the world's first photographically illustrated book. And she was really a marvelous figure. She was a botanist originally, or I guess a biologist, you could say, and scientific illustrator. Excuse me. And I just can't imagine going out and looking for seaweed when you're dressed like this. But anyway, she was indomitable. This is one of Sir John Herschel's early anthotypes, his experiments. He was trying to find a way to get color photography. He felt that it would be wonderful if, Talbot said the objects should draw themselves. Herschel thought it would be wonderful if the objects could color themselves. And they all had gardens, so he thought he would use colorful items such as plant petals, flower petals, excuse me, to make a tincture or kind of a solution to coat paper and make an image. And they wanted to copy prints. But what they discovered was the process was very, very very slow and took a long time, and it was ephemeral. So it didn't really work out. Anyway, people always ask me, how did I become interested in making anthotypes? And I was using other methods, gum bichromate, cyanotype, pinhole, and I was invited to be in a show in Poland, in Poznan, 11 years ago. And when I was there, I had a really sort of mystical experience. My husband, Mark, who's watching, was there, and he had a similar experience, although he didn't start making anthotypes, but I did. I went into a room. It was an installation of work by Paweł Kula, who's a very interesting contemporary Polish photographer. And there was everything was dark, and there were these jewel-like images on the walls, and the color sank into the paper. It was not sitting on the surface the way it does with gum bichromate printing, if you know that process. It was like something I had never seen before. And a video, which I'm hoping I can get to play for you, was projected onto a table in a continuous loop, and it was quite life-changing. I didn't start making anthotypes right away, but it planted a seed. And just so that you know, the Palace of Culture, it's now just called Zamek, which means the castle, was built in 1905 to 1910 in Poznan, and it is not a white cube gallery. This is what it looks like inside, and the rooms were dark paneled mahogany, so already just going in the building, you felt like you were having another kind of experience. It was not an ordinary art experience. All right, I am going to play this, and there's apparently an error in the link, and we're going to see if I can This is an example of Pavel Kula, one of his, if you look him up on Instagram, you can find, he just posts things like this, and you can see all these eccentric colors, which you could never get any other way, which is one of the interesting things about Anthotype. If you want to learn more, this book came out in 2012. Malin Fabry, the woman I mentioned earlier, excuse me, she's written a lot, and she's continuing other Anthotype publications. So after reading the book, I got very interested and started experimenting with different non-toxic plant materials. And these are some of the ones that I've used. It's really quite a marvelous process because something
Not
wrong.
showing on the
Yeah,
screen.
Jessica, I think
Yeah, it's not
someone else.
showing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing
Okay.
your slides. It looks like someone else is sharing their screen. Is that you, Chuck?
Let's see.
It's not showing on the screen.
My husband just said they're not showing either.
Chuck, can you stop sharing your screen? Let me see if I can. All right, Jessica, now you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, are people seeing that image that would have led into Anthotype short story?
Not
that-
yet. Try sharing your screen.
Okay, maybe, hang on. So you're not seeing anything?
No, I think you have to go down to share again.
Okay, let me just see if I can find it. Okay, I'm seeing all of you.
Can you go down, move your mouse to the bottom of the screen where it says share, where the green arrow is? Can you see that?
I'm only seeing what's, oh, there it is. Okay, sorry about that.
And then make sure for the next video you click share sound.
Right, that's on. Okay,
And
so
then
I'll go back to desktop. Okay, click share. Okay.
Good.
Okay, it's not picking up.
if you double click on it there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so can people see? Let me go back to slideshow.
Yep.
Okay. Are you getting the full image though?
Hit,
There you go.
from current slide. There you go.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. Goodness. Sorry about that. So this is from Pavel's Instagram, getting these colors that you couldn't get any other way. And this is the book that I mentioned, Malin Fabry's book from 2012, very informative. She's put out 2 or 3 others. Then I started finally in 2019 using beets, which work really well. I tried them cooked, I tried them raw. You can mix them up with a little alcohol or just distilled water. You get sort of a slurry, as you can see. And then I strained it through cheesecloth to squeeze out the, excuse me, the juice, which makes this beautiful color, as you know, if you had borscht. And then I always filter it to get out, excuse me, any little bits of vegetable matter. I also expanded and got a juicer and used purple cabbage, which makes a beautiful, beautiful emulsion. Well, it's not really an emulsion, it's more a tincture or solution. And I tried it on some tan paper, which doesn't give you that very good contrast. I recommend using a white substrate. Then following that, excuse me, I found out about another gadget. Well, this is a mortar and pestle I was doing a demonstration for Kendall Reese, who has a project, Speak for the Trees. And that's a very nice method, but it's very 19th century. And there's something more modern. Some of you might have tried this. It's a stick blender, and it works really well. So with distilled water and then this wonderful nut milk bag, which is a very fine mesh screen. And you can get a terrific tincture. And then I work in it so-called dim room. It's basically a dark room, but just, with diminished light. You don't want to be working in full sun. And I also use only certain brushes for Anthotype. If it's an Anthotype brush, that's all I use it for. Because it's such a delicate process, it can be influenced by other materials. And then just brush on the tincture on paper, and then let it dry. And the colors are different depending on this is probably all beet, but depending on the paper, the color is slightly different. And then I use contact printers to make my exposures. I'm sure all of you know about contact printers. In fact, when I was first working in handmade photography, I don't like to call it alternative photography. I like to call it original or antiquarian. That seems more accurate. I bought some of my contact printers at Photographica. So they were used and they're really wonderful. They still work. And they have a split back. If you haven't used one, this helps you look at your exposure as you're going along. And then I live in an old building in downtown Boston, and excuse me, we have a roof deck where I grow some of the materials I use, and I also make my exposures up there. Some of the early experiments were made with a found image, very much like Herschel. I was using prints and reproducing them, but I use Xerox on acetate, a laser print. Here they are exposing in the sun. And to check and to make sure that I have adequate density, I sometimes layer 2 sheets of acetate, and I might use a piece of tape to hold it in place. So you do have to check your exposure as it goes along to see if you're getting an image that's workable. And these are some examples using the same image in different ways with just spinach. I think this was a tinted paper I was using. And you can see how it sort of faded in the sun. And then this is that same flax paper with spinach and rose. And then if I'm working with a positive, you want to work with a positive because the sun bleaches away the photo solution. So the sun would have bleached this away on the positive. And then wherever it's held back, I would retain the color of the tincture that I used. If it's a negative, you will get a negative image. So you sort of have to retrain yourself if you're used to using classical photography, which is a reversal process. Sometimes I used dried materials like dried elderberries. It was kind of a funky material, but it did work. Sometimes I combined things, hibiscus tea leaf, beet juice. I'm hearing some noise in the background. I'm not sure if that's me or anyway, just double checking. And you can also expose in the winter. Doesn't have to be the summer. It can be any any sunny day. And you can also expose through a window, but sometimes windows have UV protection in them in the glass. So you might check that out if that's what you're doing. You also can experiment with how many layers of material you put on. This is an example of Lindsay Beale. Here's 1 layer. Here's if you do 4 layers. You do 1 layer, let it dry, you let it build up. Some people actually take their paper and put it in a photo tray and sort of float it in the dye. That's another way to coat your paper. And then you might have noticed I was working in my kitchen. Is it safe to make anthotypes in your kitchen? Well, if you're using something like this is butterfly pea flower tea, we drink that. It's fine to use it. It is safe. But you need to be aware that some plants, and by the way, this is actually a dish served in a restaurant in Cambridge. And when I saw it on the menu, I said, I know they dyed that with blue pea flower tea, and they did, and it was delicious. So I recommend trying it if you're in the Cambridge area, or make it yourself. Make some strong tea and then cook your rice in it. But some plants, of course, we know are toxic, and pokeberries, which you might have around you, definitely are. So I think it's really important to keep your studio tools and containers separate from anything you're using for cooking, because you don't want to accidentally poison yourself or someone else. Okay, here's another video. We're going to try this It's about the green aspects of the Anthotype process. The sustainable darkroom, Ed Carr, he's a wonderful person who's pioneered all kinds of do-it-yourself methods. And let's see if this works. I'm going to click it and let's hope it works. Can you hear the sound?
Hello and welcome to this video workshop on Anthotype printing with me, Ed Carr. So a bit about myself, I'm an artist based in Leeds and I work with alternative photographic processes, typically ones considered sustainable, which I adapt into animation. For example, my most recent work was a music video for artist Tycho Jones, printed entirely using the Cyanotype or blueprint process. I'm also the founder of the Northern Sustainable Darkroom, which is part of the wider Sustainable Darkroom network and helps promote, fund and develop the research of sustainable photographic processes. Most recently we launched the Photographic Garden, where we grow plants in-house to be used as sustainable alternatives to traditional photographic processes. But today I'm going to be talking about Anthotypes, one of the oldest photographic processes. Anthotypes were discovered by Mary Somerville in 1842, who then presented her findings to Sir John Herschel, the inventor of the cyanotype. Anthotypes make the most of the light-sensitive material in plants. So, a photographic emulsion is made from crushed plant material mixed with either water or pure alcohol. Anthotypes can really be made from most plants. That includes forage plants from your local environment, edible plants found in the supermarket, or kitchen waste left over from cooking. But today I'm going to be creating Anthotypes using leaves from the spinach tree grown in our darkroom garden. If you are at home, however, you can easily use shop-bought spinach or any other plant which you think will create a strong pigment. If you are interested, the book Anthotypes by Malin Fabry has a ton of plants that have been tested and rated, so do check that out. But today you're going to need some plant material, a blender, pure alcohol or water, a cheesecloth, some strong paper, a paintbrush, a digital positive, 2 bits of glass or a frame, and some clips to hold it all together. So to create the emulsion you need your plant material, your water or pure alcohol, and a blender or pestle and mortar. To get enough emulsion, I'd recommend crushing about a handful or 2 of plant material and just enough water or alcohol that it will properly blend and make enough emulsion. Too much water or too much alcohol can result in a weak solution, meaning you won't get a strong final print. In my experience, I use just enough water or alcohol to wet it, and not so much that it's completely submerged. Once your plants are nicely crushed and blended, you want to strain them using a cheesecloth or something similar to remove excess plant matter. So pour it through the cheesecloth and then give it a good squeeze to make sure you get out every last drop. We then move on to the coating stage. So you want to lie your paper flat on an even surface and then dip your brush in the emulsion and drain off any excess like so. And then coat on the paper in broad, even brush strokes. Once you feel your paper has a nice even coat, you can then hang it up to dry, ideally in a dark space away from sunshine. After an hour or so, check and see if your paper is dry, and then we can move on to the printing stage. So first of all, you want to place your back piece of glass or frame on a flat surface, then the coated paper on top of that, and then finally the digital positive on top of that. You then want to lay flat your top piece of glass to sandwich it all together nicely. Following this, you want to use your clips to attach everything together and make sure it's nice and safe and secure. It is worth saying that I'm using a digital positive in this case. However, if you don't have the means to make a digital positive, which is printed on acetate using an inkjet printer, then you can always use found objects such as a flower or leaf found in your garden. Once ready, you want to take your Anthotype outside and ideally leave in direct sun for a number of hours. You'll know your Anthotype is ready once the exposed areas become bleached, as you can see here. Then take the Anthotype back inside and prepare to take it apart. Because Anthotypes take a long time to expose, you can always lift up a corner once you take the frame apart and then put it back together if you feel it needs more time. But if you think it's ready, then take the frame apart, remove the digital positive, and you will have your finished Anthotype print. So that's the Anthotype process. As you can see, I personally adapt Anthotypes into animation, so I would encourage you to play around, to experiment, and most of all, to have fun. And do feel free to get in touch with us at Northern Sustainable Darkroom on Instagram, or tag us in your own Anthotype experiments.
Okay, well, I hope that gave you a good how-to. Ed is really quite a remarkable person. Okay. And I wanted to mention Mary Kokel, who's a gardener, photographer, filmmaker friend, and I was giving a workshop at the Photographic Resource Center a couple of years ago and invited her to come and show some of her work. We had done some work together. I had invited her over and showed her the process, and she's gotten very involved. And one of the things that Mary does that I think is really helpful if you get curious about doing this, she calls them smudge tests. And you can just take a flower or piece of plant material and just sort of smudge it on a piece of paper. And if you get a good color, that tells you it will work for Anthotypes. And these are also, I think, they're samples from the actual tinctures that she made. But she has more on her website. Here are some more. And then Mary and I got very curious to know what other people were doing in Anthotypes around the world. So we looked people up and invited people we knew or didn't know. And we put together a show in the spring of 2022 in Providence, Rhode Island. And we also had a Zoom, an international Zoom, with people talking about the Anthotype today, with people from the MFA and from Sweden, England, and EDCAR. It was quite interesting. And this website, if you just look it up, and I put it all in a sort of bibliographic sheet for you that I think Dana will make available if you're curious. You can look it up and it's all still there. You can actually see the Zoom panel. And if you're interested, I recommend it. And so there are lots of people who are using Anthotypes today as a metaphor, the way the material embodies the meaning, and also as a non-toxic way to work with photography, to get images that couldn't be made in any other way. And one person who I find very interesting is Christophe Franken, who's in, and I think it's pronounced Schenk, Belgium. If anyone here speaks Flemish, please correct me. And he goes to sites in Belgium that have been contaminated by industrial production. And he uses the plants from that area to make Anthotypes. And this is an aerial view of his setups. You can see these look kind of like elderberries or maybe even pokeberries, whatever the Belgian equivalent is. And you can see how he's processing things, putting it through cheesecloth. He has brushes, so it's exactly the way EDCAR did it, the way I do it. And here is Christophe. And why does he have a cabbage on his head? That's because cabbages are very popular in Belgium. Everyone grows them in their garden. And he noticed that if he used different cabbages from different gardens, they produced different colors, which led him to believe that that was somehow a commentary on the minerals and heavy metals that were in the soil in people's gardens. So he gave everyone in this town, or everyone, people who volunteered, cabbages to grow in their gardens. And then he took their photographs with a 4x5 camera, which they found fascinating because everyone just uses phones now or digital cameras. And then he used their their cabbages from their garden to make anthotype paper and then print their portrait using that particular cabbage that they had grown. And you can see all the range of colors. So it's pretty interesting. And Nettie Edwards is someone who's been doing anthotypes for 10 years, and she's very experimental. If you look her up, you'll find all kinds of things. She's one of the people we invited to be in our show. And she's just very dedicated to anthotypes. And these are images that you could not get in any other way. You couldn't get it with gum bichromate. You know, you can't get it hand coloring a black and white photo. This is only through the anthotype. And I think it's fascinating that people are exploring that at such depth. Francis Schanberger lives, I think he's in Ohio, and he's been making anthotypes for many years. He uses baby clothes and Barbie clothes as his photogram element for his positive. And he uses very funky handmade setup, kind of like Ed Carr. And he prints quite large. And I'm not sure which plants he was using. Maybe, I don't know if it was iris or tulips. And you can see these funny little marks around the edge. That's actually where the clips were. Those clips were blocking light, so that it didn't get bleached. The color got bleached away everywhere that it was not protected or held back by the garment. And you can see different transparencies give you different densities of the purple. This woman, Jennifer Linnea Daly, this seems to be her only body of anthotypes, but she did her MFA thesis completely as a green enterprise, recycled paper, spinach. So if you were to, you know, you could eat this paper probably. Anyway, but she was trying to make a point about non-toxic photography. Christine Elfman is someone who's experimented a great deal with either growing her own excuse me, Hopi red dye amaranth or iris to make a very large scale and very beautiful anthotypes. We included her work in the show in Rhode Island, as with Nettie. These were made with lichen, and they're really quite large, like, I don't know, 30 by 40. And she made her own exposure units or contact printers to put outside. And, but you have to be careful if it rains. Anthotypes do not like water. You'll immediately get a stain. So if you are exposing out in the sun, you have to really watch it. I've had things be rained on. So you have to have a workaround. John Opera teaches photography in a college, I think, I want to say in Detroit. And he was one of the people we included in our show. He does a lot of experimental anthotypes, including a lot of portraits of his students using various berries. Scott McMahon is a friend. I met him through pinhole photography. He got his MFA at Mass Art, and he's done a number of anthotypes using pokeberries. He said this was crepe myrtle anthotype. I'm not sure that it is, because I've tried crepe myrtle and I did not get this color, but you never know. It's always good to experiment. Recently, a duo, Amanda Beth Marchand and Leah Sobsey, have worked with the herbarium of Emily Dickinson, which is kept at the Houghton Library. It's too fragile to handle. I'm sure they had digital scans, but they have reprinted, in a sense, her images using anthotypes from plants that she would have known or would have grown in her garden. So you can see they used this, probably it was a digital scan on acetate or something similar to get the image. And there's a book out about them now. Sarah Van Kuren, long ago, she taught at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. She was Scott McMahon's teacher, actually. She worked with pokeberry anthotype. Here's an example on a linen handkerchief. So you can use fabric as well as paper. And she also made an image on a white leather glove. And we tried to borrow this for our show in 2022, but it had already faded away and was just completely gone. But this shows you, here's a close-up. You can see the image of the fern photogram, and here's the glove coated with pokeberry and the ferns laid out under glass in the sun. And something that interests me quite a bit is, where does this idea of preservation of something ephemeral come from? And a number of people have written about this. Jeffrey Batchen wrote about it in his book, Burning with Desire. The idea of, how did painting start? Maybe you know this image, or their variations of a young man is going off to battle or on a long journey, and his lover or his wife wants to remember him. Of course, photography didn't exist in ancient Greece, so she drew his silhouette on the wall with a stick of charcoal, and he's illuminated with a lamp. And so she could remember him by that silhouette. And that the ephemeral image, I think, led us to silhouettes and eventually to photography, because people want to hold on to something that's going to disappear. It's been written about quite a bit. And there's a fascinating book, The Night Albums, Visibility in the Ephemeral Photograph, by Kate Palmer Albers, and you might want to check it out. She doesn't mention the anthotype, curiously. And so the next question is, how permanent is or impermanent is the anthotype? And of course, this is the image I showed you earlier. I don't know what it looks like now. This early Herschel anthotype, I tried to find out from the Ransom Center what date was this image taken, but I couldn't get an answer. So anyway, it may not look like that today, even if you keep it in the dark. So some artists embrace that idea, and they acknowledge and accept that the anthotype is going to fade. And I'll show you some examples. And some people have a digital workaround, which is what I do, and others, so that there's an image. These are some of my more recent images, where I'm layering Swiss chard, which is one, I'm going to call it an emulsion, it's really a solution, with tulips and homegrown pansy. Layering the colors, you get different effects. They fade at different times. Here's another pansy appearing green, but it really did. There's something about the Swiss chard and the pansy in that paper. It was a purple pansy, but it turned kind of green. So some of my images have really faded quickly, but some are more reluctant. They're sort of staying. So this is the way this anthotype looked in 2023 when it was originally made, scanned and printed. And then a year later, I had it rescanned and printed. And you can see the image is still there, but the contrast is changing. It's becoming more sort of yellowy and blue as opposed to purple and slightly pink. And here's another one of some images of some moths, Luna moths, with geraniums that I grew on our roof. And when, a year later, it's become sort of bluer and a little less distinct. And I'll probably get it scanned again in another year just to see how it's doing. Elizabeth Ellenwood has worked with purple cabbage, red cabbage, and she does not copy these images digitally, or at this time. She was working with pictures she had taken of bleaching coral, and she was very concerned about the bleaching process and the ephemerality and of the color in the corals as they died off. So she thought it would be appropriate to make these and not copying them digitally. We did exhibit these in 2022 in Providence, and they were quite a bit fainter than these original images that she has. I think these were with blackberries. I'm not sure what she's doing lately, but I know that was a big part of her concern. Caleb Cole is a very interesting artist. Maybe you know their work, made replicas of, or I guess he calls them memorial portraits of trans people who've been murdered in the US and Puerto Rico, taking those images and printing them as anthotypes with roses that Caleb grows himself in his garden. And they're really quite amazing. I recommend looking them up on Caleb's website. But if someone does buy one, he sells the original anthotype with a digital copy, because the original, as we've discussed, will fade. Nettie Edwards, I showed you some of her earlier work. She did a whole series called Grave Goods, all about an aunt of hers who died. And Nettie went through all her what she left behind And she took pieces of paper from her aunt's correspondence and coated it with plant material. Here it is being exposed to the sun. And then she took very large images of them and displayed those. We had those so she didn't send the original anthotype. I'm sure those were long gone, but she kind of recorded her thinking process. Here's the plant material on the scrap of paper, and then the little cross that was used to make the image, keys on a little note to herself. Anyway, they were very touching and quite amazing. And I like this one very much because this is, I think, a mirror, but it looks like a daguerreotype or even a contemporary cell phone in a holder. So it kind of bridges centuries in an interesting way. And here she's got a garter holder, or whatever they're called, which is also very antiquarian at this point. So this is, I think, a wonderful remembrance of different ways of doing things. And I do recommend looking up Nettie Edwards because she talks quite wonderfully about all her work. And this spring I had a show and gave a little workshop at Olin College in Wellesley, Mass. And I thought it would be fun to get a banner made of a large anthotype. So this is a digital print on fabric based on the anthotype. And this is, just, it was lying out flat. You can see the detail. You have to steam them because otherwise they get quite wrinkled. And right now, if you're in downtown Boston, I have some work at the Singer Editions digital studio in the Artist Building at 300 Summer Street. And they're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 5:30. And it's in conjunction with some wonderful natural history photographs by Rosamond Purcell. So if you have a chance, I hope you'll stop by and you can see them. And then what's next? Pavel Kula and Marek Nonievich, another wonderful experimental photographer whom we included in the Providence show in 2022, are putting together a show called The Touch of Nature. And it will be 8 international artists working with plant-based photography processes of all sorts. And Ed Carr, you saw his video, he'll be part of that. I'm assuming he'll show some videos. But I'm excited to be seeing that and be part of it. So it's kind of catching on. And then last but not least, I just want to say that every year since 2022, Malin Fabry and the alternativephotography.com organization that she heads and founded are putting on a World Anthotype Day, and you can participate. So I hope you will. And thank you for listening. Okay. Okay. So I'm not sure what I do now, Dana. Stop screen sharing.
Yes. And
Okay. Let me go back to that. Okay. Okay, back to meeting. All right. How do I have gone into another, I just say stop share. Okay.
perfect.
All
Thank
right. Sorry for the technical glitches.
No, and sorry for mine. If everyone would like to unmute, we can give Jesseca a round of applause before we start questions. Something that we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not up on Zoom.
It was a wonderful selection of images and photographers, and we're really excited that you have a show up right now that we can go see at Singer. So
Thank you.
thank you. I'm going to briefly in the chat repost the video link that we could not play. So if folks want to save that link on Vimeo, that is the first video. And before we start questions, I will also say that Jesseca kindly shared a bibliography with me that I will be able to, I don't know if I can share it on Zoom, but I will, if you email me at programs@PHSNE.org, I can email that to you. And let's see if there are any questions in the chat. From Vladimir. Do you run shows in the Boston area? The one you have up right now? I don't know, Vlad, if you're talking about demonstrations or exhibitions.
Demonstrations, exhibitions, whatever Jessica can do. It's very interesting to see that old technique in action nowadays.
Thank you. Well, I've done, the show that I mentioned in 2022. Mary Kokel and I organized it, and we invited international artists. You might enjoy go to the website for I put all that on the bibliography, the different websites. So you can look and listen to the Zoom and come to Poland if you want. In January, February, and March. I don't think it's the best weather, but that show will be up. But there are a lot of people involved, or you could go to the alternativephotography.com website and just see. I mean, I think Malin Fabry has put out 2 or 3 books now. So you can look up and say, well, gee, what will happen if I use cucumber peels? And you can look it up, and sure enough, somebody in Malaysia has made images with it. I mean, it's pretty amazing because I'm sure Sir John Herschel would be fascinated if he were alive today. I'm sure he would love to be on on the internet and look up all the different things that people are doing, and then the digital workaround. But anyway, he started it all, so we can thank him.
Of course. And Jessica, do you have a studio? Maybe it is possible to visit your studio.
Well, and actually, I live and work in my studio, and you sort of saw you can see it. I'm in it. Right now, I'm kind of busy, but at some point in the future, we do have open studios once a year, every fall. It just happened a couple of weeks ago, but I don't usually open it up, just occasionally. But
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for your interest.
Absolutely.
There is a question from, and pardon if I pronounce this wrong, but Silka, Anya, and Brina ask, how do you store your anthotypes?
Oh, great question. I store them in the dark, but that doesn't stop them from fading. And I'll also say that sometimes when I mix up the tincture of the plant material, I store it in the refrigerator so it doesn't get moldy. If you put alcohol in it, it usually doesn't get moldy, but it can. It can also change color and kind of get a sediment will come out. And I also recommend labeling it, because my husband sometimes is looking around in the refrigerator and he says, is this food or is this art? So I put Post-its on everything, because they can look kind of like, well, is this grape juice? But if you open it up, he's like, God, it smells horrible. It's red cabbage, anyway. The best way to save or preserve your anthotypes is to make a digital image or some other kind of image that will last longer. Good question, though.
Jessica, have you tried to use vinegar to stop shading process?
I have sometimes put vinegar in the emulsion so it wouldn't go bad, but you can't, once you make the anthotype, you can't get it wet because you'll just wash it away. It's basically, you're making sort of an ink with a sediment, I think. And then when you put it on the paper and let it dry, it's just very fragile. And if you get it wet, that's why I showed the picture of the Christine Elfman piece so I'm sure it rained and some water got into her contact printer. I've had that happen. So you can't add vinegar after the effect or after the fact, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thing, sorry.
Sorry.
I was wondering is, you talked about night albums, and we had a brief conversation about this before, but sort of the concept of having to view something in a dark room stored between black paper and the imagination of that. But if there were albums made like that in the early stages of when anthotypes were being made, they wouldn't have survived.
Probably not, although I wish I knew the date of the image of that Herschel anthotype made with the red stalk flowers, because did they take it in 1920? I mean, and maybe it's faded since then. There's something also that was very interesting, and it sounds kind of whimsical and humorous now, but in the early days of photography, the silver images were fading because Herschel hadn't invented fixer yet. And so there were people, again, it was men, I believe, these scientists and early students of photography, they had something called the fading committee. And they were studying the phenomenon of fading. Like, how can these images were so exciting to them. How could they keep them from fading? So there was someone, and I read about that in this book that, the Kate Palmer Alber's book. They sort of, superciliously imagined that there were people with these night albums, just saying, oh, well, you made these images and we all want to see them, but they're going to fade. So how are you going to look at them? Go in a darkened room and on a moonlit night, you can see them. So it was sort of making fun of these people, these adventurers, these discoverers, these explorers who were inventing the daguerreotype and the silver, early silver prints, and just saying, well, what good is if it doesn't last? And so, that's why Anthotype ultimately did not take off and become the #1 way to record your child's birthday party. Now we have our phones.
Yes, and ephemeral by moonlight albums is just such a romantic idea.
Yeah.
And
Well, one other thing that actually Dana and I talked about was, I'm sure if you've been to the Gardner Museum and you're looking in some of those glass display cases and there's a sort of a curtain over it, you can lift it up and look. And that's because the inks and things in the images that are displayed in that case, that vitrine, or the letters might fade if they're exposed to light. So you can lift it up. And some 19th century photos I've seen, like at the Met or something, when the Howard Gilman collection was on display. I don't know if anyone saw that a few years ago. There were some early photographs displayed, but there were, black velvet curtains over them. You could lift it up and then put it back. So even those are fragile.
there's another comment from Silka, Anya, and Brina saying that turmeric is a good starter solution.
Yes, but it's actually a little bit different, because turmeric needs to be developed in, I think it's bicarbonate of soda or something. And it it behaves very differently from all the other plant materials that I've known of and that people are exploring, in that it sort of becomes greasy, or that it seems that way, and it sits on the surface differently. And you get it wet with this soda mix, and then you rinse it, and you can't do that with other anthotypes. So you can certainly use it. And in fact, I think I have on the resource list, there is a young woman who makes a turmeric anthotype, and she has a little video of it, and you can see it. But it behaves differently from the others. But it sounds like you've tried it. Did you try turmeric? Whoever asked the question. Maybe they're not there. Oh, Silkia, Ina, and Brina, I don't know if you tried turmeric. You did? Okay, great. Maybe you're going to invent a whole new way of being with turmeric.
Yes, and I think that there are
Fixed with borax.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so maybe it's more permanent. It's only one color also. And I don't particularly like that color, but if that's your favorite color, it's sort of a yellow ochre, and it might be the solution for you.
With the artists who are making anthotypes now, like international group of people, it's really fascinating. And you've connected with all of them?
Well, not all of them, but some. I think if you type in Anthotype, or sometimes people call them sun pictures or plant-based pictures. I mean, it's really caught on. The sustainable darkroom in England that Ed Carr mentioned. There's also Hannah Fletcher and I forgot her, Alice Casanave, I think is her name. There are three of them who are really experimenting with plant-based developers for film. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And those three are going to be in this show in Poland. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm actually really excited and interested to see what's going on, because as far as I know, there are only two of us doing Anthotypes. I don't know what Pavel Kula and Marek Nonievich are doing. They might do Anthotypes. But there's a lot of possibilities. In a weird way, it's kind of a dyeing method, almost a dyeing and bleaching more than, I mean, it's photographic because you're using light to write and record, but it's kind of an unusual interpretation.
And you know, I was in New York recently at B&H, and they're still selling chemicals, you know, to develop your own stuff. If you wanted to develop something in your bathroom, you can still do that, but you can't dispose of these materials.
Right, right.
Good conscience, you don't want to dump what you're using down your drain. So I find this fascinating and really lovely that, you know, you can make these images, you know, as ephemeral as they may be, without, you know, without doing that.
Mhm, mhm. Good point.
And you can grow anything you want in your garden to experiment with.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. And oh, I mean, I just love that's why I wanted you all to see the Ed Carr video, because, you know, apple peels, I mean, it all works. Just try it, see what works best for you.
Yes, if people do try this, we want to hear about it. So please, you know, contact us at programs@phsne.org, and we would love to hear about this. I want to thank you again, Jesseca. This was really wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
oh, John says, if the images fade in the dark, maybe something besides light's wavelength is causing fading. Absorption, question mark?
You might be right. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I mean, it could be something in the paper. For example, if you make cyanotypes on a paper that has buffering in it, that can fade. So you want to have unbuffered paper for your cyanotypes, or likewise for your mats. You want unbuffered mats for mats if you're matting a cyanotype, because that will some kind of chemical interaction. But you could well be right. I mean, maybe more scientists will get interested and study more of these things, and we'll have long-lasting plant-based photography as a result.
Wonderful. Everyone is giving thanks, and so do I, and so do we. If everyone wants to unmute and give Jesseca one more round of applause.
Again.
So great to have you. And what we'll do is, you know, during the editing of the video, we'll see if we can work that initial video back in.
Oh, that would be so nice. I appreciate it. I don't know why that happened, because it worked the other time when we were rehearsing.
I think it was a typo in the URL, but oh, someone said maybe keep the prints in a freezer.
Oh, that could work. You know, Mary Kokel has been experimenting with that, because a lot of times, you know, you mix up a batch of plant material. It's a lot of work. So, you know, you coat a lot of paper, and I just store it in the dark, but Mary puts it in a black photo paper bag and puts it in the freezer. We don't have room in our freezer to do that, but I'm sure there are methods out there. They just haven't been discovered. We need the 21st century version of Sir John Herschel to work these out for us. Bring him back, you know.
And you know, I do want to invite everyone to before we close the evening, just letting everyone know. And Jesseca, I hope maybe you would come to that. Our program on December 8th at 7:30 is going to be our annual holiday show and tell, and there is a sign up link which let me see if I can put paste that into the chat. It will also be in snapshots and on PHSNE.org. There we go. There are 10 slots. One is taken. They're about 6 minutes each. So if you have something that you'd love to tell us about, or you would like to share a camera, a story, an image, you know, please go to the sign up link and join us on December 8th. Just leave your topic in the comment field. We're really looking forward to that in December.
Make an anthotype.
Yeah,
You have time, even in the fading light.
exactly.
Why not?
And yes, anything you'd like to share. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful November. Gather the last of your garden and see what you can make with it. And Jesseca, thank you. And I hope to catch your show.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody.
No, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. If anyone has any questions, Jesseca, would you type your email into the chat?
Absolutely. Okay. And also the bibliography that whoops, got a typo in my address. Will answer a lot of questions. There are a lot of videos out there. Not all of them are that accurate, but I think Ed Carr is pretty great, the way he sets you up.
Great. Yes, if anyone would like the bibliography, please email me or email Jesseca, and
Yeah, I can send it to you too.
one of us will get it to you. All right, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Thanks, Jesseca. Thanks,
you.
Mark. And so nice to have you. All right.
Okay. Thank you.